So today I'm going to talk about the four horsemen of the apocalypse of the end of your relationship. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Bit foreboding and pretty creepy in a way. But this was something that John Gottman became quite famous for. And I'll explain in a second where it comes from. But there are basically four categories of behaviors that were collated into these four categories that are quite predictive, reliably predictive of people splitting up. Now, John became quite famous for being able to predict with a 90% accuracy after spending 20 minutes with a couple, interviewing them and looking for the horsemen. And basically, if the horsemen weren't remedied, then he could accurately predict with 90% accuracy who would still be together in 3 to 5 years, which is quite an amazing feat and still holds true today. So where did it come from? Well, John is by heart a researcher, and so in the late 70s, early 80s, he decided to build an apartment on campus, which became known as the Love Lab, and basically got couples to volunteer and come and spend 24 hours, hang out, do your own thing. He gave them a couple of things to do, like talk about your current problems in your relationship, that kind of thing. But mostly they just treated it like a bed and breakfast, and they just came and did their thing. And of course, this was no ordinary bed and breakfast, because there were cameras everywhere. There were two-way mirrors. Everything was being monitored and observed. And when I say John measured everything, I mean he measured everything, including heart rate during an argument, which we'll get to. And what he was able to find is that because John was doing this work for such a long period of time, and he was able to track couples over time and see how they were going in 3 years or 5 years, and then look back to the data and the information he had from when they were at the lab, he saw these patterns showing up. And that's how the four horsemen were created. And so I tell my couples all the time that the first three horsemen are common to most relationships. In fact, I've never seen a relationship without the first three. And I'll start with the fourth, because the fourth is the biggest predictor of divorce. So the fourth category of the fourth horseman is called contempt. And contempt is any type of behavior where we're kind of losing respect for the way we are interacting with each other or treating each other. And that can go from a micro behavior, like eye rolling when your partner's trying to say something, or you're at an event, a social event, and your partner's telling a story that they've told 100 times, and you roll your eyes, or you make a joke about your partner in front of other people. That's already a bit of contempt. So it can go from a micro behavior like eye rolling right through to yelling at each other, calling each other names, swearing at each other, all the way through to verbal abuse, and of course physical abuse, which is at the other side of the spectrum there. And I tell couples all the time, there is an antidote for each of the four horsemen. And the antidote for contempt is stop. Just stop it, cut it out, because it will end you sooner rather than later. And so it's important to know what contemptuous type behaviors are, recognize them in your relationship, and definitely cut them out, right? The other three, you've got like a longer lead time to deal with these horsemen. Doesn't make it right though, even though they show up in most relationships, doesn't make it right. You still need to avoid them and find antidotes for them. So the first one is called criticism. And criticism is anytime we say something to our partner that is too broad, or like a label. So too broad would be, you always do this, you never do that. A comparison like, why can't you be more like this? Why can't you be more like that? Or this person or that person. I remember in one of my previous relationships, significant relationships, being compared to, one of my sister's husbands, for example. It doesn't help to make that kind of a comparison for anyone. And, I tell couples, it's like saying to your partner, you're an introvert, why can't you be an extrovert? Right? So the only thing you're going to do is you're going to feel criticized or attacked. So labeling is also part of criticism. It's not as harsh as contempt, but labeling like, why are you so lazy? Why are you acting like a child? You're so selfish, right? Those labels all fit straight under the criticism horseman. And so the only thing we're going to do if we feel attacked or criticized is the second horseman, which is called defensive reaction. Now, this happens in a microsecond, right? And as soon as that defensive reaction begins, your emotional level is going to rise. And so John's measured this. Like, remember back to the lab, he measured everything. And he found that if your heart rate in an argument with your partner goes to 100 beats per minute, you are what he calls flooded. And certain things happen when you get flooded. Now, 100 beats per minute is not that high. If I go for a run, I will probably get up to 140. Some people will go 150. And most people's resting heart rate might be between 60 and 80, somewhere there. Now, some people flood quicker than others as well. You might not even be aware that your partner is flooding. So I remember when I was doing the John Gottman training, he had a couple sitting on the couch with the heart rate monitors on their fingers. And you could see the husband getting visibly upset. He was going a bit red. And as they're talking, the wife's pulse oximeter went off. So she'd reached 100, but you wouldn't even necessarily have known it. So when you get to 100 and you're flooded, changes happen in your brain. So you lose access to the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that is creative thinking and problem solving. You lose all empathy for the other person, and you're probably going to misinterpret what they're saying as well. You're not going to understand each other when you're flooded like that. So one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to blow up into a massive screaming match, a massive argument, or you're going to do the third horseman, which is stonewall. Now, stonewalling looks different depending on the person. Some people, when they stonewall, they will walk away from the argument, walk away from the person. And the problem with that, there's nothing wrong with that, except couples don't have a structure for how they do what's called a timeout. But let's say one person will either walk away or somebody will shut down. So they'll go, well, I'm here physically, I'm present physically, but I've withdrawn into myself and I'm not here mentally or emotionally. And I've shut down. So like talk to the hand, right? I'm here physically, but no, I'm stonewalling you. Now, both strategies are designed to do the same thing, but you can see that it just creates walls between people. And couples don't know how to break the negative cycle or the negative energy and then do something which is called a repair, which I'll talk about in another video. And certainly they're not very good at coming back after a fight to talk about what happened in a calm way so that they can both understand each other's perspective and learn from their arguments instead of repeat their arguments. So that's a recap of let's do a recap: the four horsemen: criticism, defensive reaction, then stonewalling, and of course, contemptuous behaviors. And we'll go into more of what the antidotes are for criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling in another video. So you need to choose, right? Either you're going to allow contempt to be in your relationship and end the relationship, or find other strategies for communicating what's important to you.